everybody. Thanks for tuning in today to our Sustainability Conference. I'm going to be chairing this one. My name is Brian Kent. I'm National Technical Director for Tarmac, and as I said, I will chair this session today. I'm really looking forward to this. I think we've got a fabulous panel of industry experts here. Really looking forward to hearing their views. In terms of what we're going to discuss, history can tell us that actually we're quite an innovative industry, but it's not always evident to the public eye. They travel on a black road. They're generally naturally oblivious to anything that's changing the makeup. However, we know we've actually taken a lot of actions. However, society now quite rightly recognises climate change targets. They're asking more questions. They're holding their industry to account in terms of what are we doing to reduce our carbon footprint, and they expect transparent targets and they expect progress. Today we're going to talk about what can be done to accelerate the progress of innovation with particular regard to sustainable innovations. Today I'm going to be joined by Clara Davies, James Burdell and Ian Large. Clara has worked as a policy official in a variety of government departments, including Government Office for Science, HM Treasury and most recently the Department for Transport. James is a technical director working as part of the Roads Asset Manager team at AeCom with 20 years experience of highways operation and maintenance, although he doesn't look that old enough, does he really? Ian is the performance manager for highways and traffic management services at Blackpool Council, where he leads the management and delivery of all aspects of highway maintenance schemes, capital schemes and utility works. So, formalities out the way. My own kick-off for this session, guys, I would say, speaking from my own experience and the experience of many other suppliers, I've actually generally found that unless the material is in a specification, it's a very lengthy and repetitive process to get a new product through to routine use. With many organisations, including local authorities, want to do their own trials and evaluations, which can take years. So, very interested in your views. Can I come to you first, Ian? Can you talk the audience through your current approach to trials in terms of who's involved and the typical timescales to trial and thereafter to recommendation or adoption?
Yeah, morning, Brian. I can indeed. I'll answer this with two hats on. I'll answer with the Blackpool hat on and the LCRIG Infrastructure Innovation Board hat. You're right. Traditionally, historically, it's been quite a task to bring a new product or service in. It's been lengthy, time-consuming, and difficult, and I think that has stifled innovation quite considerably historically. You know, the scenario of a company coming to a local authority and saying, "I've got this new product, can we try it?" Engaging with them, identify the product, picking some network, doing a trial, putting it down, only to have to repeat that next door in a neighbouring authority, and then having to repeat it again in the one after that. So that's not what we should be doing. And through an initiative called Project Amber and LCRIG, Blackpool's adopted that approach. It's a lot different. It's there to support and promote innovation and trials. You know, if the LCRIG's got, I think, currently 83 members. With another 10 or 15 waiting in the wings to come on board. So all local authority membership is really key. And if you become a member, your support trials work. So what we're trying to do is make the idea to the application a lot shorter and a lot simpler. If you approach LCRIG in terms of being an innovator, saying you've got a product, you'll very probably get in front of my innovations board in the first to do a pitch to talk about what your product will do. The aim of the board is to support that in LCRIG, so to stop that cycle of engagement, repeating the process of doing a pitch and a trial. You know, if it's done once with one LCRIG member, you will have done it with 80 odd at the minute. So that's what we should be doing, so that. You know, because it's costly. You know, as an innovator or a company that's got a new product and they want to push it out there, to have to repeat that over and over again is costly. But aside from that, it's environmentally unfriendly because you're repeating that process. You're travelling around the country. You're using the raw materials. You don't have to do it once.
Okay, thank you, James. What's been your experience?
Very much as Ian just described, really. I think Yeah, quite often innovation it's client-led, isn't it? It's demand-led, orientated towards what the aspirations of a client needs. So I think quite often we're reacting to a client or an organisation who's leading in certain areas. And I mean, the real example now is around carbon and what sort of products we can start introducing into reducing carbon and achieving net zero. So getting from laboratory to actual in standards, using it day to day is so protracted at times. And for me, it comes down to confidence and that appetite for risk. Sometimes we will fail, but that's a learning opportunity, provided we can accept or ensure that what we're delivering is safe and doesn't compromise service to the customer or deliverability. Then let's try and give it a crack and accept sometimes it might go wrong, but we can learn from that and we'll come back better.
Clara, coming on to you now, I know DFT's been involved with live labs. What's been your experiences?
The innovations landscape in government is very, very broad, but as you said, chiefly been involved with live labs. I think with that, we've been really aware of the need to work closely with local authorities and sort of build those relationships between LAs and academia and other useful resources, and just trying to work through what's the best way that those different bodies with those different objectives can work together. Like, what lessons can we learn from the first one and how can we move that into future ones? I would say that particularly my area of government and sort of the stuff that we care about, we are very focused on stuff which has real world impact, and we're very clear that novelty for novelty's sake, you know, ministers really want to see, like, how will this improve their constituents' lives? What can they point out? What's the legacy of this? Obviously, with innovation, failure or things not working how you thought they would is an inevitable part of it. But I think a key point is that we should only let things fail, you know, as little times as possible. So we need to, you know, be open with each other about sharing when things haven't worked out, so that, you know, it's not the same lot trying it in different places, you know.
So interesting listening to you all there. I think we're a meeting of minds that we can and need to do things better. So what's the vision of the future, Ian? LCRIG, as you said, is over 80 local authorities, but there's another 200 authorities out there. What's your vision of the future? How are we going to accelerate uptake?
LCRIG is aiming to share the learning. So the point we just made about success and failure, that should be shared. You shouldn't be. It's good points made by both James and Carla about you shouldn't be shared. Shouldn't be scared. To fail. We're talking about perhaps evolution and not revolution. It'd be great to get the next best thing ever, but things tend to, in our industry, tend to progress, evolve, and improve, and elements of it get changed or replaced with other things like more carbon sustainable products or recycled stuff. So we're always working from a sound base in terms of the products. So I mean, it's a good point James made around the struggle that people, innovators have around the confidence in products and that risk that the client, you know, there's got to be shared, because innovation doesn't have to be absolutely brand new. You know, things evolve and get better. And sometimes it's incremental, but as long as you're moving forward and it's either quicker, cheaper, more environmentally friendly, less disruptive, those are all admirable goals. And by default, if you're aiming for quicker, more efficient use of something, you by default you tend to save money. We can't not mention cost, because cost is a factor. But in everything we've done so far, particularly around delivering actual works out on the street with innovative products, we've managed to do that through Project Amber quicker, more efficiently, with less carbon impacts. We've made a great difference, but all that adds up to a quicker, it's more cost-effective works. So there's less disruption out on the highway, there's less overall capital cost, and if you, depending on what you're doing, you're reusing something that's already been done before. I'm a big advocate of if you've mined aggregate many years ago, it took a long time to form that aggregate, you can use it again and again. We've all got these a climate change agenda and being sustainable. It's not something that's aspirational, it's really achievable. And there's a place for every bit of innovation in every subject matter, not just about roads and highways. You know, there's all kinds of innovation out there. If you push all that together, and promote it and assist it to actually end up on the ground, you'll meet the demands put on everybody at the minute, which is about being more efficient and and less damage into the environment.
Thank you. So, Clara, what's the DFT's thoughts and how they can contribute to moving things along a little snappier?
Following the live labs, we're definitely using that as sort of what can we learn from this, what is best practice, and I think there's definitely some learnings there in terms of how we can help innovative trials like that set up to succeed in the first place. What can we do to help make sure you've got the right mix of people, that you sort of the way that you're thinking about it is sort of the most effective way based on what we're learning from there. Also, just helping people to think about building evaluation in from the beginning is something we've definitely learned from that, because trying to bolt stuff like that on halfway through or realizing, oh, actually, it would have been nice if we had, it's painful for everyone. So I think we are developing, building on not just live labs, but everything else that's gone before, sort of what does good practice look like and helping improve that. Another learning from live labs which struck me was the importance of getting the right people in the room and having the right connections there. So a lot of the really successful ones is because they had a few really good people who knew the right people in the important roles. And I think there's a question for us, the central government, what can we do to help people have those networks? Because, it's great if you can develop those during a trial, but if you've already got those before you even start, that's really helpful too.
Yep. Okay, good, thank you. And James, from a consultant's point of view?
Yeah, all of the above really. I think socialising what we're doing broadly is really important, and making sure we engage or we share the best practices and all sorts of platforms. Whether it be social media or internal knowledge sharing sessions, or doing stuff like this to release to industry is obviously will help people appreciate where we're going as an industry, to try and share that information and drive the uptake. I think, you and I, Brian, working with National Highways, we know uptake is difficult. There's many parties who are quite resistant sometimes, but for whatever reasons, it might just not like change, it might not suit their business model. And I think, with that, it'd be good if we try and better incentivise people to be open or more open and honest about what the business models are, so we can drive a best practice which isn't going to compromise into that. I think I think the fact that what you mentioned to Ian is we've got 80 authorities, but there's another 200 or so who aren't yet engaged. I mean, I think that figure or fact speaks for itself, that we've still got quite a battle to go to bring all of those authorities together.
Okay, I mean, that's interesting. You mentioned there about how we communicate. Do you think we've got enough forums, James, that allow us to collaborate and communicate, or do we need more forums? How do we become more joined up nationally?
Yeah, I think that's the point, isn't it? Exactly that. I think we've got so many forums already, which is good. It's positive because people do engage with them. People love a forum, and that's no bad thing. And quite often, what's surprising for me is, for all the forums I go to or have been to, I quite often bump into the same people and characters. Yet that structured approach of actually joining them up and having a common goal and objective, across the whole suite of forums, however many they are, I think sometimes that goes missing. Some of the messages and some of the work streams that come out of those forums perhaps become a little bit disjointed to one another.
Would that be valuable to the DFT, Clara, in terms of do the DFT know who the go-to organisation is to facilitate trials, to avoid duplication of effort, etc.? Have you got that clarity? Is there something you would like to see?
I'm conscious that I don't know what I don't know. I think there are good networks within DFT and out into the wider world. Is it perfect? Could there be more that we could do to align? Almost certainly. I think the thing that I'm aware of, as noted, I've been enrolled for about a month now, so still learning, but I'm conscious, particularly when it comes to local transport authorities, there's a very broad range of engagement and sort of capacity and capability. And as mentioned, you may see the same faces at multiple forums. So I think there's a question about, are there forums for the engaged people, but also how, as we as central government, reach into areas where they maybe not been as engaged before. And I think that's a real challenge that we need to work through and think through, because, you know, particularly when you have competition-based money being up for grabs, it can become the same places who have been successful before become successful again.
Obviously, LCRIG is seriously contributing to pulling local authorities together. Is funding or expertise an issue when it comes to evaluating new innovations?
Funding is an issue. I think it's fair to say it can be. Expertise, I don't think so. You know, in all the organisations we just talked about, there's ample expertise out there in the industry. I mean, funding for innovators. You know, we at LCRIG, we've done a lot of work with innovators. We had a session where we had 50 odd come and pitch to us around innovation, really small. Some of them were one man bands. Some great ideas. Some put their passion into it, a lot of their own money, and where can they go with it then? What can we do with it? So LCRIG did through the WJ group did do the innovations fund and put out some money, but there are other pots out there.
So that's a fair point, James. Again, from your point of view and your experience, are you clear where this funding is? How do consultants get involved in this sort of thing?
Again, it depends who you're working for. So I mean, you have to congratulate National Highways and DFT actually for making the designated funds part available across the past two RISs, because that's quite clear in terms of what it's targeted against, how you would apply for it. Although I do agree with Ian that sometimes smaller companies are less able or less knowledgeable in how to apply or what they need to demonstrate in order to apply. And you know, I absolutely get behind that support for those smaller companies, because quite often that's where the innovation lies.
So, Clara, obviously DFT does have a funding pot. In terms of future allocation of the funding pot, is there going to be priority to sustainable innovations?
I think, well, obviously, you know, our friends in Treasury and ministers always have a view on this, so nothing gets agreed until it's agreed with them. But I think definitely sustainability and zero carbon ambition is one of the greatest challenges facing the transport network right now, and we have to have innovation to sort it. I think sustainability is going to be one of the core themes running through all of this.
Good. So same as you, Clara. Is there anything in particular you think suppliers or contractors could do to assist overcome barriers? So
there's two things that come to mind. One, as you sort of highlighted in your last question, sort of thinking about what are the key things that government care about or government are really going to try and drive at. So sustainability, levelling up is another one. Obviously, I should mention in this moment. But you know, what is it that will really be the core things that we'll be trying to drive to improve? I think the other thing, which would be lovely from my perspective, is, as I mentioned, if evaluation is built in from the beginning and we had some really good stats and really good evidence, which we can then use to make a really robust value for money case, which has been incredibly helpful because, once again, Treasury, when it comes to spending reviews and all that stuff, we are conscious that government can sometimes be quite risk averse. And if there's something that's proven, there is an instinct to go for that because it's public money and all that. Whereas if we had a really robust evidence base that says, no, this is definitely better, it just makes that argument so much easier to make.
Okay, makes sense. Ian, do you want more from suppliers and contractors?
No, it's not so much more from them. I think we could all do more between us. We need to look at innovation and sustainability and the carbon agenda differently. You know, it's not. I think often it's thought about as a separate thing from the day job. You know, you've got all this work to deliver, and I've got the sustainable thing to answer. You can put them both together and deliver the work you've got to deliver differently. With some innovative techniques, and by default they're more sustainable, they're more cost effective, etc. So we do everything so that there's that whole trail from trying a product to getting it on the ground, to see how it lives its life over a period of time, testing it and reporting on that. But what I've found as well, just the point I just make is we've spoken to some innovators. I personally spoke to some innovators where they've had a product or service that's got it to a point and it's not progressed. They've been round on that trail we've talked about by going around all the authorities or clients or potential clients, and it's not gone. And all they've needed, I can see, is some input into it to make a slight change, or they've not had any feedback, so they've just gone, no, it's no good for me. But if you feedback a particular innovators are fantastic people. I'm not an innovator. I'm not that clever. And they have a mindset and they go off on this train of thought and deliver stuff, and they're great. I've met some fantastic people. But they can tend to be a bit narrow, and you just have to open up the view to them and say, look, you know, if you just widen your view a bit and consider these other things, it'll improve your product or your service, but it'll make it more usable out in the real world. You get more feedback. So I think that's really important, that we should all have that bit of a wider view.
Okay, James, suppliers, contractors, contribution, collaboration. What do you think?
Yeah, collaboration is key. I would like to see some of the larger tier 1 contractors working together more closely. But in saying that, I fully appreciate that we're all commercial organisations who are trying to get a step ahead of each other to win the next bid. So it makes it very difficult. But you know, it doesn't mean it's not achievable by having, you know, get back to the forums, open forums. There's a particular material we'd like to develop jointly. So an example being, so the reflective aggregate is something which is available across all of the supply chain. So we could all work together on it to develop a specification to allow its use, and then recognise the benefits of using that more widely, or well, introducing it and then using it widely. We've all got the aspiration to do better, to achieve the benefits which, you know, our government and our global policies are aspiring for, and particularly around environment. So, you know, to work together on some of those common goals, I think will enable a better growth.
Okay, thanks very much. So we're about to open for questions and answers. Staying with you, James, anything else you'd like to say before we open up to the audience?
I mean, just to go back to what I said at the start, you know, I think the appetite to not always succeed and accept that we learn probably more from failure than we do from repeated success. I think that's really important. I've always been quite vocal on that fact in the forums I attend. And then the communication and how you know we use this, because it's good work what we do. It's attractive work, and it could be used to encourage more to industry who might have broader ideas. And I'm thinking now about filling the skills gap and you know, bringing in the next generation to fill, you know, a frankly largely aging population of people in our industry, and who's going to take it to, who's going to bring the energy to keep us going. So I think that's a target and priority for all of us, I think.
I hope you weren't looking at me there. Clara, anything from you?
No, actually, I was going to echo similar things to what James said about you know, the helping to create a culture where, as you say, failure is accepted. And I know there's a bit of work in government because we are more risk averse, and we do have ministers and we do have press and opposition that we need to get through. So just making sure that we, as I say, help to create the culture where that is accepted, but also it's, you know, it doesn't end with the failure, and then that gets shared, and then we learn and we embed lessons across the place. I think that has to be the core thing. Great.
Ian, Ashley, coming to you, any thoughts?
I think, you know, innovations, it's a key pillar of moving forward. You know, it's integral to every part of what we do. And I think delivering that innovation, you know, at a national level and sustaining that and encouraging that and including everyone we've just talked about, from SMEs up to tier 1s, etc., and the DFT, so they're happy with it, is really, that's what we need to focus on. There's loads of good stuff out there, so we just need to keep at it.
Great, thanks for that. Right, before we move to question and answer, I'd just like to thank the panel today for your contribution. I think, as I said at the start, there's a meeting of minds. We know there is an issue. Really pleased to hear today that it's a passion and drive from you three in terms of acknowledging that and support to push it forward. So on that note, I'd like to open now for any questions from the audience. So over to you guys. Type in your questions and we'll answer them as best we can. Thank you.